Hi there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Becca Bertrand. I'm the Executive Director of Newport Film, and we are just beyond thrilled that you've joined us today on this very special day, Earth Day, to participate in this live stream Q&A with the incredible filmmaker and film subject behind the environmental documentary Wild Things. We want to first, before we welcome our guests, I want to give a big shout out to our incredible presenting sponsor, the Green Love Foundation. Before the film, you saw a little clip of the work that they do in the community, and we are just so incredibly grateful for their support. And we also want to give a big thank you to one of our season-long virtual supporting sponsors, the Rhode Island Council for the Humanity, for helping to support all of our virtual Q&As throughout the season. So without further ado, I would love to introduce the film's director, Sally Ingleton. Hi, Sally.
Hi, Becca, and hello to the wonderful audience there in Newport.
Yes, thank you so much. And I also want to welcome film subject Dr. Lisa Searle. Hi.
Hi.
So my first question for you guys is, how is the future? Because you are living in tomorrow.
Well, I think you can go to bed and wake up and the sun will still rise.
That's encouraging.
The world is still here. It's where I am. It's about 9:30 on Friday morning. I'm in Darwin, which is right in the north of Australia. It's a very tropical part of northern Australia, right up in the middle on the coastline. And Lisa is right down the other end of Australia, right down south in near Hobart. On the island, the beautiful island of Tasmania, which features a lot in the film.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And people out there in the audience that are watching, if you have any questions for Sally or for Lisa, you can just type those right into the chat and we'll be able to ask them directly your questions, which is kind of cool. So Sally, I'd first love to hear, how did you get inspired to make this film?
Well, look, I've been making documentaries for well over 30 years now, so I'm quite a seasoned filmmaker. But most of the work that I've done has always been for TV, and this was the first time I was making a feature-length documentary. A lot of the work that I have done has been stories about the environment, quite a lot of natural history projects and nature science projects. And I've kind of, always hunkered to sort of make a film about the environment movement. And obviously at the moment, all over the world, our planet is facing such incredible challenges. And it's really going to be people that will make the difference. It's up to people to start getting active and to use their voices to actually bring about change, because as we're all very aware, governments are sort of sitting on their hands, and it has to be the people that really agitate to make governments listen and change their policies. And it's wonderful now in the United States just suddenly seeing, the difference that a different leader can make in terms of, suddenly the landscape changes and climate change is no longer something to be derided and criticised. It's something that needs addressing, and it must be, such a relief for all those who care about the environment in the United States.
Absolutely.
So certainly for making the film, I wanted to make a film that I felt was inspire people to get active. Rather than a kind of a doom and gloom story about all the terrible things that are happening. And so I sort of chose to focus on people that were being active and that were going to the front line, because, as I said, it's really going to be up to those people to make a noise and to make their voices heard. And, the last couple of years has been pretty extraordinary for environmental activism.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of environmental activism, Lisa, you do incredible work in the film that I can't imagine how you do it. First, I wanted to ask you, are you ever scared being that high up in those trees? And have you had any really kind of frightening moments where you think, okay, this is it. This might be the end.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently. How that impacts what we do and how we do it, and yeah, I'm scared all the time. I think for a lot of people tell me that I come across as this kind of fearless character, but it's not the truth. I'm scared to go out into these places. I'm scared of the way that the contractors are going to react. I'm scared of not being able to achieve what we want to achieve. That's one of the big anxieties going into actions is not actually getting in, like getting stopped on the way, and not pulling off what we really pull off. So yeah, there is a lot of anxiety. Yeah. In terms of being up in the trees, yeah, sometimes. I mean, I'm scared of heights. Who isn't?
You are?
Scared of heights. Of course I am. It's a normal human reaction. Most of the climbers I know also have that fear of heights. It's very unnatural to be climbing those kind of heights. Like, we're not really designed to do that as human beings, and so we are going against our nature in a certain way by doing that. But I have a huge amount of trust in the people that I work with, and I have a huge amount of trust in my skills and experience and the gear that I use, and I know what I'm doing, and I know how to handle myself up there. There are some times it gets really windy when you're right up in the top of the canopy of a really tall tree, and it's so windy and the tree's moving so much, and you, oh God, please, not today.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How was that as a filmmaker, Sally, to be kind of filming tree climbing and then up in the air? Did you ever have, I guess I'm curious on points, like logistically, was it?
Well, I have to say, I never went up the tree, but I was very lucky that I had a very fearless female cinematographer who did a lot of the filming with Lisa. And look, now we've got these fantastic cameras. We're very fortunate that a lot of the activists, particularly Lisa, they've got phones and they film a lot of their actions. So I relied a lot on the generosity of the activists themselves who, I would ask them if they could film particular things, and they would, and then they would share their footage. We use GoPros quite a lot. And yeah, Olivia, she did quite a lot of filming. You would probably remember Lisa, that she managed to, I think, give you a camera or put on a GoPro or something to get up in the tree. I have to say, a lot of the film was actually shot on a phone, which is pretty extraordinary.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? It is extraordinary. And, often, we used also some really high-end cameras, and I had a very great person who was our colorist and also the post-production team who really worked hard to make, the technical quality of some of the lower resolution footage look pretty good. So, yeah, all those people out there who want to make films, start making them on your phones.
Absolutely. Or just how everyone can be an activist and can document things.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that obviously so much here in the United States, the power that film has. Just, this week we've gone through hearing that the verdict for the murder of George Floyd. That all happened because there was someone who had a camera on her phone, and we all have this power. And I think it's a really, it's an exciting time for people in film to realize just how incredibly powerful your actions can be.
Yeah, that's so true, Becca. And I think it's wonderful for young people to feel that they too, can have the power to make a difference by recording things, filming things on their phones, and using social media as a real tool to get their messages out. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the students that you followed throughout the film, did they provide a lot of footage for you? And are they sort of I'm curious to see where they are now.
Well, the three students that feature in the film, particularly Harriet and Malou, at the time that we were making the film, neither of them actually had phones. So they weren't filming, but their parents were. So their parents are often with them at various actions and at some of the marches. And excuse me, fortunately, they were filming. And so I was really lucky to get hold of some really great footage, particularly of some of those early actions. In terms of where those students are at now, I mean, I think the experience of being involved in the School Strike for Climate movement in 2019 really was a wonderful opportunity for those students to feel that their actions inspired this big movement to really take off in Australia. And I think it gave each of those young people incredible confidence to know that if they follow their heart and they follow their beliefs, then they can make a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Harriet's been down spending some time with Lisa. Do you want to talk about what Harriet's been up to in Tasmania?
Yeah, so Harriet and I met through this film, and I think seeing each other on the screen a lot before actually meeting in person, and we're both very inspired by each other. And Harriet came down to Tasmania with her mum for a film screening of Wild Thing. And I was thinking, because she only came down for a couple of days and she was with her mum, and I was thinking, oh, I really wanted to stay for a bit longer and have the forest with me. And I was trying to work out how to broach the subject with her mother to say to her mother, hey, can Harriet stay with me for a while? And then her mum actually approached me and said, yeah, Harriet would really like to stay. Would that be like a burden on you, or would that be okay? Like, yes, that'd be totally fine. So Harriet stayed with me for a couple of weeks. We took her out into some threatened forests where they were logging habitat of the swift parrot, which is a critically endangered bird, only found in Australia, and it breeds in Tasmania during the summer months. So she came out, she actually attached herself to a machine and got arrested, one of the logging coops protecting the swift parrot. And as a result of her actions, and there was a number of other people involved in those actions, but the loggers actually moved out of those coops and stopped logging the swift parrot habitat. So that was really special. And I've also taught her to climb trees and got her up into the canopy of trees. And yeah, so she's had a couple of trips down to Tasmania and spent some time out in the forest with us, which has been really special.
That's so cool. That's an amazing development. I wasn't expecting that. That's really great.
It is. It's I think she really looks up to Lisa and feels like Lisa has kind of been mentoring her and, a bit like a big sister, I guess. And look, Harriet's parents, when I first heard that Harriet had been arrested, I thought, oh no, this is like, what are they going to say? But I did ring them up and say, I've heard Harriet's been arrested. How do you feel about this? And they were like, it's okay. Look, she rang us and she thought, and they're terrific. They're like parents who say, well, we trust you, and if this is something you really want to do, then we'll support you. And obviously they know Lisa, and they know Lisa is not going to allow Harriet to be in a dangerous sort of scenario. So, Lisa, I've seen Lisa out on these blockades a lot, and there are a lot of young people who go to the blockades that are very inexperienced and that haven't climbed trees and haven't been to blockades before, haven't been arrested. And so for the more experienced activists, there is a real role to play in terms of ensuring that all those people feel safe and feel like there is someone looking out for them, that they're not just hanging out on a limb. And Lisa is definitely, a person who is very mindful and watching how people are responding and ensuring that people aren't having anxiety attacks or whatever. But it is, it's like Lisa was saying earlier, it is quite scary. And I think we kind of record some of that in the film where people are saying they're feeling nervous and anxious. Because breaking the law it's not a natural thing for us to do. We don't grow up just wanting to break the law. We grow up believing that the law is there for a reason and you follow the rules. And what has, of course, been happening is that, you realise that the rules are not right and the law that exists is so often wrong, and we have to agitate to get things to change.
Definitely. And do you ever think that because you were filming, it either made people be, and maybe Lisa, this is more a question for you because you've been in more of these scenarios. Did it make people be on better or worse behavior? Sort of either the police reaction to a protest or kind of the way that either the contractors would be approaching you? Do you think they were maybe a bit better because they were on camera or worse because they were on camera?
I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But for whether or not we film for media purposes, we film everything for safety purposes. Part of our protocols. So whenever we are out in the bush or in town or in a sawmill or wherever we are doing an action, there is always one person there responsible to film any of the interactions that we have with police and with contractors or workers, so that we do have that on record. And yeah, I don't know if it makes much difference now we're treated the police and the contractors behave, but at least we can then go back and look at that footage and say, yeah, this is what happened. If something does go, not quite to plan, or there's some aggressive behavior and that sort of thing.
That's amazing. We have a great question from the audience that I think is really interesting. Maura is wondering, overall, how do you think going through COVID will impact environmental activism?
This is a really interesting question, and we have seen it impacting environmental activism. And I know that the COVID lockdown was really hard for everybody. I mean, going through a pandemic has been really difficult for everybody around the world, and everybody has a COVID story now. For me personally, my COVID story, that I was at a blockade. We'd been there for about a week. We were helping a community group to protect an area of forest that was imminently threatened by logging. We managed to hold off the machines, and we were sitting there holding this forest, and lockdown came in overnight. And I was there with a whole bunch of activists, and we were there in the forest, and basically this new law came in at midnight. We were still there in the morning. We would all be arrested under COVID charges. So a difficult decision to abandon that forest and abandon that blockade and just go home, and drove through the whole to a safe place where we could actually be safe and take our time, and then get to our COVID lockdown locations. And then we were not allowed to, we just couldn't go back into the forest. We couldn't go back into protesting for months, and it was empowering. And it's really the only time in my life that I have really felt that stuck, and I was watching the logging going on, because sustainable they carried on business as usual, and apparently logging of native forests was deemed an essential service by the Australian government. So they were carrying on completely unhindered and unchecked, and we were stuck and not able to be out there doing anything about it. And for me, the hardest thing about COVID, that was the hardest thing about being in that COVID lockdown, just having to sit on my hands and watch this logging, not being able to do a single thing to stop it.
Yeah, exactly the same thing happened with the mining industry. So the building of new coal mines, that was seen as being an essential service. All the workers could still attend the coal mine or keep building that new coal mine, whereas the protesters weren't allowed to go and hold any actions or even remain within those protest camps. So the Camp Bimby that features in the film, where people have been actively trying to stop any new coal mines happening in that part of Australia, they had to everyone had to go home, and they just kept running with just a skeletal staff of, 4 or 5 people who stayed there just, to make sure the place was secure. But yeah, it's been really, really hard, because obviously there's been no street marches. And, the school strike movement has kind of gone online. They've been holding workshops and activities. So the young people involved, they have been doing things online. But it has been really hard. And I personally feel like it has kind of sucked the air out of the momentum that was happening in the environment movement in 2019. And I just hope that when COVID is finally under control and everyone is vaccinated, that everyone will be able to get back out there again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, even in Australia, you know, we've got, you know, we don't have any, we really don't have a COVID problem in comparison to many other countries. You know, we're very, very fortunate. I think, you know, at the moment, virtually the only active cases of COVID are people in quarantine who are returning travellers. And every time there is some kind of leak and there's a case in the community, that those cities are going into immediate lockdown to snuff it out, because we really don't want, you know, the virus to get out of control.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's not a world that we understand here in the United States. I'm a little curious, and also if anyone out there has any questions and you want to get them answered, please feel free to write them again in the chat area. I'm curious to see if you have any kind of overarching thoughts about environmental activism in Australia versus what might happen in the United States or elsewhere around the world. Maybe some either advice for activists in the US, or, you know, things you think we could do better or that we are doing well.
Well, I personally think environmental activists are probably the same all over the world. I think they're motivated by the same passion, in that they care for a wild place, or they're concerned about what's happening to the planet. And my advice to anyone who is worried about the environment, or is concerned about, you know, trying to protect a local park or an important tree in their community, or a wild place that might be near their community, is get together with people who also care. You know, find your tribe. I mean, this is the message that sort of is echoed right around the environment movement. Find your people, find your people, find the people who also care about that issue, and get together and start. Don't try and do it on your own, you know, get together with others, which is, you know, very much what, you know, what Lisa and her group have been doing. And the great thing with social media is you can build that support, because you can share what you're doing, and people will come to you. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people that are aware of the work that Lisa and her colleagues have been doing over the last number of years, protecting native forests in Tasmania. The challenge is getting governments to change their policy. That's what's so hard. It's really difficult. What do you think, Lisa?
Sorry?
What do you think about whether activists are different in different countries, or whether the priorities are different?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously differences. There's differences in like how we can do things and what we're doing and what we're working to protect. But I agree with Sally, like the environmental activist movement, you know, there's a lot of similarities all across the world. And I think that's the big thing. It's getting out there and getting active in whatever way you do. And I think, yeah, definitely finding your people, because we can't do this alone. A lot of people do carry this stuff by themselves. A lot of people take this personal responsibility. I'm not doing enough, or, you know, I could be doing more to help. And unfortunately, a lot of the time that gets channeled into just like making individual your life, like recycling, or, you know, getting biodegradable toothbrushes or reusable drinks or something. And it's not really that helpful, because, as I said, what we need is policy change. What we need is to hold these. It's not so much about these like consumer choices we make in our everyday lives. I know that's also important, and if everybody changes, then we will see big changes. But what's really a difference and making really positive changes to the world is forcing our leaders to change the policies and to actually put into place things that are going to offer permanent protection and things that are going to improve.
because
we're in this climate crisis and people are just refusing to talk about it. Leaders are refusing to talk about it and refusing to acknowledge it and any kind of actual. So I think anything that people can do to put pressure on politicians and to get active, very valuable. And something I also like to say to people is, like, coming out into the forest on the front line is not for everybody, and it doesn't have to be for everybody. The work that I do is very difficult, very confronting, very time consuming. There's a lot of sleep deprivation involved. We're out a lot of the time. We're out there. I in the forest this week in the snow, and woke up my sleeping bag basically frozen, and we're out there in very harsh conditions, and I understand that not everybody can do that. Not everybody is in a position to do that kind of but there are so many other ways that people get involved, and those other ways are also incredibly valuable. And that might be organising marches and rallies. It might be fundraising for organisations that are getting active in wild places. It might be writing letters to your politicians, writing letters to the newspaper, getting those messages out there and just getting your voice heard as much as you can. And what you will find, the more vocal you get and the more active you get, is that you will find the other people that care. And I think that's so important to build this community and around you that also care about the same thing. And we are so much stronger to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of speaking of that,
great things that we've seen happening in different parts of Australia is actually activists and communities using the law as a way of bringing about change and actually enforcing, policy changes. I don't know if that's happening in the US at all, but we have had a couple of really groundbreaking cases where a community managed to stop a coal mine from going ahead because they actually put together a case that went through the law courts saying that it would jeopardise the community, the health of the community, if that coal mine went ahead because of the risk of increased carbon emissions and global warming. And the group that Lisa is involved with, I mean, they have also taken some of those decisions through the courts to ensure that they can remain protesting, where, they tried to change the law to stop people going into logging coups, and they basically took that to court and said, no, we have a right to protest. So I think if any people are out there still listening, and particularly young people, that whole area of environmental law is, I think, going to be a really growing area.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another audience question. Have there been any, from Steve, has there been any environmentally conscious brands or organizations like a Patagonia that have jumped in to help Lisa and your team kind of from a corporate standpoint?
Yeah, and that's actually been really interesting in recent years. We actually have a huge amount of support from Patagonia. Patagonia are one of our main corporate sponsors, and they help us out financially, but they also help us out through publicity, and they provide a whole heap of gear invaluable when we're out there in the snow in the forest for days. Important to have good gear, and most of us are doing this voluntarily. We can't afford to go out and buy $1,000 Gore-Tex raincoat, so getting that kind of support is helpful. And there's another company, Autovox, which is an Indian-based outdoor gear company as well, that's come on board in the last couple of years, and also similarly they've provided for run trainings to train up other activists, and they've provided a whole lot of gear for us for that little bit more comfortable when we're out there in the bush and in those difficult situations. So yeah, we do have a few sponsors that are kind of regular donors and help us out with that sort of thing, which is really helpful.
Oh, that's so great. That's amazing. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time with you, but I wanted to just reiterate that if you haven't seen the film yet, Wild Things is still streaming through newportfilm.com until midnight tonight. And as Sally and Lisa mentioned, the best way to get involved is to do things with other people. So we are a part of Aquidneck Island Earth Week with this program. And Earth Week has tons and tons of different programs you can get involved with this week. There's amazing organizations on Aquidneck Island and throughout southeastern New England that are doing amazing environmental work. And we would really encourage you to get involved and participate and do something good for the earth this week and every week, but especially this week. And Sally, if people don't catch the film with us and they want to tell their friends about it, what are some other ways that people can watch it?
So we've got a website called www.wildthingsdocumentary.com, and we will shortly be making the film available for streaming off that website, and also DVDs. If anyone still uses DVDs, we'll be making them available. We've got outlets happening in Australia, but obviously the film is available. If any other community is interested in screening the film, then please just get in touch through that website with me, and we can help you to organise a screening. We have a streaming platform called FanForce. I don't know if you have that in the US at all, but
I don't know. Maybe we do. I don't know.
It's a streaming platform, and they also do hosted screenings for communities and stuff. So we're working with them as well. But yeah, all the information's on our website.
Wonderful. Well,
thank you once again, Becca, and all your team at the Newport Film for having Wild Things as part of Earth Week. Thank you all to the amazing audience there for tuning in, and yeah, get active. Get active. Don't stay silent. Get out there and get active. Protect the wild places. You must have a beautiful coastline there, I imagine. And
we do. Yeah, we do. We're right here on the ocean, and it's pretty amazing. So every single day you wake up and you're like, oh, we're really lucky to be here.
You are. You are. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Lisa. You guys are incredible, and your work is amazing. And we can't wait to hear the next film that you're going to make, Sally. I'm sure there's more.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone. And again, you have until midnight tonight to stream the film. And then if you missed this one, we hope to catch you next week for more films through Newport Film Virtual. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.